So I've flown out to Ferrari HQ at Maranello, been into that office, no photography by the way, and they give me this key to the 296 GTB, which is this one in Verde Bosco, forest green. Looks pretty awesome. I've never driven one of these before. It's a very special car. It's been out for about a year or so, but I've still never got my hands on it. It's the successor to the F8 Tributo that I know quite well, but they've really enhanced it in a lot of different ways. It's got even more aggressive aerodynamics, this massive front wing here, and very aggressive air scoop to get air cooling into these carbon ceramic brakes, standard, just de rigueur these days in these new Ferraris. But you can also see more cooling going through here and more cooling going through the roof scoop here underneath this wing through into these, again, quite aggressive cooling structures here, because this is a hybrid. So it's actually got an engine plus the motor and battery in the mid-engine configuration. If you look further back, another scoop here under the rear wing, and from the LaFerrari, an air brake that comes up under brakings, also to build downforce for cornering, to give you downforce support. So this car's been tuned quite differently. So you get basically better suction, effectively better ground effect, aerodynamics pulling this car to the ground. So all round, downforce is improved, performance is improved, there's more power from this hybrid. So I can't wait to get my hands on it and see what she's made of. Take it for a spin. And this key has its own little home there. So the helm's quite familiar. Got this little gate here that mimics the original manual gearbox. You've got your reverse, automatic, manual, and launch control. And then up here, it starts up quite quietly because it automatically starts in hybrid mode. So if you want to hear what it's made of, you've got to select something that requires combustion. And there it is. A lot to learn on this bad boy. It's going to be a good trip. All right. Well, I wondered, if you're driving a Ferrari around Maranello, is it a bit like just driving a Honda Jazz around Japan? But it does seem to be drawing some attention. Even though these cars are as common as, well, a Ferrari in Maranello, people love them, can't get enough of it. So if you're looking to add a little bit of Italian drama to your life, but you don't want too much drama in your life, there's something you should use when you're buying your next car to make sure you're not buying something dodgy, and that's Car Vertical. All you need to do is add the VIN number or the registration plate of the car you're about to buy into Car Vertical, and you get a full, thorough report. Checks out the financial status, make sure the car hasn't been stolen, it's got a good odometer so you haven't got fake mileage and stuff like that. So here's a nice looking one, Fiat 500 in red, lovely colour. And on the whole, it looks like it checks out. The odometer's clean, you've got a nice steady rise, hasn't been sat around rotting somewhere in a shed, it's been used. Good financial legal status, but it's got damage. So you've got these juicy photos, you can see exactly what's happened. It's had a head-on, bit of a heavy impact, and it's an insurance write-off. So it's actually quite a serious hit that it's taken. Doesn't mark it as unrepairable, but it does mean there's been repair work or it's going to need some repair work. Might look clean from the outside, but on the inside it could have an issue. So make sure you use the Car Vertical app to check your next car. Click on the exclusive link in the description below, or use my discount code BCD to get 20% off when you use Car Vertical. Buy smart. There's an interesting tale behind Ferrari's famous prancing horse. The Black Horse was originally a symbol of Count Francesco Borraccia, a legendary Italian Air Force ace during World War I. He painted it on the side of every plane he flew, perhaps as a reminder of his stable of horses back home. Ironically, Borraccia was shot down by a pilot from Stuttgart in Germany, where the city crest bears pretty much the same prancing horse, along with another famous car brand, Porsche. Enzo added a yellow background from his hometown Modena, and then the prancing horse made it into the history books, and he made history with his racing team Scuderia Ferrari and his road-going derivatives. For sure, motor racing is and always has been the beating heart of Ferrari and the source of his success, but you've got to give a little bit of a hand to Don Johnson in Miami Vice, who definitely boosted Ferrari sales in the 80s with a little help from Tom Selleck in Magnum PI. Sounds beautiful. V6 twin turbo 3-litre engine. They call it the Piccolo, like a mini V12. And Ferrari have really tuned the harmonics going through these exhausts to give it this cracking soundtrack. Actually, when you close the doors on this car, this 296 GTB, it's sort of hermetically sealed. You feel your eardrums just sort of squeeze together. So the best way to hear that engine is to open the window a bit and let some of the soundtrack in. It's got a much higher crack than the F8 Tributo, which is the predecessor. It's hard to believe this is the entry level to the Ferrari world, entry level supercar if you will. For a cool 240 odd thousand pounds, or about 340 odd thousand dollars, you can get yourself one of these. So it's a very different price bracket, if you like, the next step of hybrid, which is the SF90, which I've been specifically told not to compare this to, but you kind of have to. They're both hybrids, but there's some big differences between this car and the SF90. There's also a lot of similarities in the spec, but fundamentally the difference is the SF90's got 2 electric motors in the front, 1 in the back, and a combustion engine. And this car is purely rear-wheel drive, whereas the SF90 is 4-wheel drive with those 2 motors that you can use for the dynamic handling and torque vectoring. So the combustion engine powering the rear wheels is complemented by the electric motor to give you a total of 830 brake horsepower, which isn't a million miles away from an SF90 when you think about it. They're just under 1,000 horsepower, a lot more money. You're starting around $500,000. You can spend all the way up to $1 million on one of those guys. You get as far as the SF90 XX, the double X rated banger. They are very different. The SF90 also weighs 100 kilograms more than this car. Lightness, though, really has always been a passion for Ferrari and a part of their DNA in handling. So hybrid technology, it is heavier, you've got to carry the batteries. But again, this little car, which is 50mm shorter wheelbase than the F8 Tributo and has an entirely new chassis. It's shorter, it's smaller, the V6 engine, it's more compact, tucked really neatly into the position behind me in the mid-engined configuration that Ferrari is so famous for and that they have perfected over so many years. It's a shorter, lighter car, kind of more in keeping with Ferrari's roots, to be honest. I'm very curious about how this is going to feel when I get onto some twisty roads. But just this getting going phase, it's very comforting. And I'm going to start by saying the stuff that you could say, the boring stuff, the stuff that Ferrari just does innately well, would be surprising if they did anything less than the best, which is the ergonomics. When you sit in one of these things, the wheel, the seating position, it's very relaxed, but it supports you in the car. Everything is always just so. And these lovely steering wheels where you've got the rev lights built into this carbon fiber piece here, but very firm grip on this lovely steering wheel where you've got access to all the buttons and whistles, but they're not in the way of your thumbs. So you can get up some spirited driving without turning on the winkers, the wipers, changing, radio stations and other annoying things like that. So it's really set out very well. The main thing that's really evolved with these Ferraris now is you're never going to see any of those old school dashboards with, waggy fingers running around on the RPM and the speedos. Everything's digitized. I do miss some of the old-fashioned dials, but really there's no going back because this is the future for Ferrari and it enables them to build in more technology, give you some sat nav and things that people insist on these days when they're shipping around. So the speeds on this thing are extremely impressive as well. The 0 to 60 is less than 3 seconds. Ferrari call it 2.9. The internet seems to think that it's a lot faster, closer to 2.5 seconds. And again, the internet reckons the SF90 is pulling 60 in around 2 seconds, faster than the Porsche 918. So the stats on the car are amazing, but there's a lot of other things they've built into this that weren't, from my memory anyway, on the F8 Tributo. So you've got the Maranello system again, which basically keeps you on the island at all times. You've got traction control in its various guises. Oh, it's quite stiff and bumpy. So actually, I'm about to engage bumpy road mode, which will take some of that bounce out. Now, these Italian roads, got to say, they're a lot better ironed than the ones I'm used to in Britain, even parts of the US. So this bumpy road mode is quite a convenient thing, and it just takes the edge out of the shock absorbers, keeps your feelings in where they belong, and just makes this a little bit more easygoing. But it still means you can take this sucker on track, turn that off, dial it up to 11, and give it full send, and you're going to get that precision at the wheel, which I'll be trying later on the twisty road. Loving this colour, Verde Bosco, green forest, which of course this car is very green because it's a hybrid. And on the electric battery mode alone, you've got a 25-kilometre range, and the EV will take you up in pure electric something north of 120 kilometers an hour. So you can stealth mode all you like. Then you can put it back into full combustion mode, and I believe I'm right saying that if you put it in the competition setting and give it some rice, that's the fastest way to recharge the battery using driving and regen. I'm not going to do that for now because I need my range, because I'm taking this car somewhere very special. Something that meant a lot to the founder of Ferrari, Enzo. The Parma Poggio di Bacetto hill climb. This is the route of Enzo's first competition. A 30-mile time trial from the outskirts of Parma in the lowlands to the town of Bacetto high in the hills. It was run back in the day on gravel until the roads were paved. You can imagine what a young Enzo would have felt entering his first event, a big one, with spectators lined up in their thousands all the way along this route, watching his every move. Racing was dangerous in those days. No helmets and no seat belts. The risks were high and you were better off just being thrown out of the car altogether. Enzo knew the risks and managed to finish fourth. It was a big first step for his driving career, and it laid the foundations for an eager engineering mastermind, the result of which I'm sitting in now. I just feel bad for my phone. I just launched it from its little phone slot. My iPhone Max Plus doesn't quite fit in the sleeve there, as I just discovered when I did a sort of half-hearted launch. That was enough to send it into orbit. All right, let's just try and sort that out. It's probably disappeared somewhere dangerous. There we go. Let's go for the old-fashioned way, under the thigh. All right, stay put now. This is a gorgeous route. Slightly bumpy, but loads of really good, natured, fun corners to see what this car does. There's a little bit of rain and drizzle on the road now. Car's still as planted as before. It's quite firm. I don't know if it's stiffer than the Tributo. And I do find it difficult actually to get my head around the models. They all have very different names: F8, SF90, 296, and La Ferrari, of course, being the daddy of them all. A special car, a one-off really, outside of the normal Ferrari range, if you like. But I don't care about that, because the lineage of the philosophy of design and technology that's gone into this car actually talks to all of those different models. This has got active rear aero. You can see it popping up behind me when I need it. It's quite an abrupt piece of aerodynamics. And the aero on this car has been set to be quite aggressive. It's not active to remove drag, it's active to increase downforce. So that rear wing is popping up on under braking. It's giving me downforce to help the braking force. And during aggressive cornering, it can sort of detect throttle inputs as well as lateral forces to decide that you need some help, and in it comes quite quickly. So that's a cue from the La Ferrari. So although this is in the sort of, if you like, the regular line of Ferrari following on from the F8, it's a vastly different car. Hybrid versus turbocharged. Turbocharged F8 being a big break from the norm for Ferrari from the 458, which was the last linear engine, but a natural development really into turbo after McLaren went that way. But Ferrari really are the daddies with these hybrids, and the SF90 was a really berserk car, as was the La Ferrari. But this one, it's just taken it back a notch, and it's just thrown away a little bit of weight, shortened the wheelbase, lowered the center of gravity with this really clever V6 with that really open 120-degree configuration that really means you can stretch it out, centralize all the hot components and keep it near that vent that keeps it cool, and basically get the weight as low as possible. So that's really feeding into the handling, and some very clever electronics that are keeping this rear very stable. I think it's a very, very drivable car, and I'm not even putting it through its paces on a track, but I think this is, you know, the environment you're going to be in most of the time. This is a road car. God, this thing is just absolutely on rails. It's just unbelievable. So actually, after a long trip on the motorway, I depleted the battery, but after a couple of hairpins and getting the brakes used a bit, I've regened nearly a third of the electric battery. So I'm back from whatever it was, 640 horsepower, back to the full 830, and it's phenomenal, that much power going through the rear axles. The rear is absolutely solid, it's unshakable. All that power going through two wheels is not budging at all, and I think that's got to be partly down to the engine management, the ECU, the traction control. I'm still on the sort of top setting before I turn the ESC completely off. it's laying it down into the rubber with total sure-footedness. Quite remarkable. So I really start to wonder what would actually upset it. I'll try it with the CT off later and just see what it's like. I'm not going to do anything crazy, but I'm just curious. Can it actually break traction? Or have they got some sort of miracle happening at the rear axle? It just doesn't have any vices. With an all-electric car, you get the batteries in the floor, and it does give it that sort of very low inertia. That's not the case with this. It's a mid-engine car, supported with some battery weight, quite low down, but that's not what makes this thing tick. But really, I do think compared to something like the SF90 that just bites your arm off at every opportunity, breaks traction, it's very exciting, very visceral car. This one's a lot more user-friendly, easier to control. And for zigzagging around these lanes, I really wouldn't think about it without a car like this that gave me that confidence that it was going to do right by me. So there's a nice hiss from the turbo. It is honestly unshakable. I think the only way you get this thing really going sideways is with a massive yeehaw on the steering wheel. I think that for general mountain plugging, it's just very solid. Now I might just make sure that I'm out of bumpy road mode. Okay, bumpy road off. I was off. So I'm in the less compliant mode now. There's a few undulations in this little section, but nothing that I think that's really throwing the car around. Platform super stable, and I really am liking the fact that this car is smaller and lighter than its predecessor. So you get that little bit of nice rotation in the slow corners. Let's see what it's like in this hairpin. I'm just going to roll in, get onto the brakes. It's lovely, it just floats through very, very easily. I get the feeling again that there's so much more performance in this that frankly you'd be almost unable to unlock in a road setting without being put in prison almost immediately. It just doesn't budge. Even on that bumpy section, the shock absorbers are just there dialing it in, car's just finding grip. I think it's a combination of the diff working incredibly well with these tyres and just the nature of the chassis and the positioning of the weights. They've worked incredibly hard with this engine package to get it as low and to the middle as possible, all of which is giving it this wonderful sense of stability, but enough rotation in the slower corner so you're in command of where it's going. What a place to be taking it though. This route is incredible. Back in the day, it would have been covered in gravel. Drivers would have been rubbing mud off their faces and sweating and working the wheel. No power steering, no luxuries, big steering wheels, double clutching, and just cruising around and walloping around with this 8-speed paddle shift is a doddle. Sadly, it's not closed off. Otherwise, I could have a hell of a lot of fun here. Just have to hope one day we get to close off a section for a movie or something and come back here and see how fast this thing really can go. Just gives you so much confidence, this thing. It's just glued to the road. It really is glued. And I'm not saying that other Ferraris I've driven haven't felt confidence inspiring, but this one is quite exceptional. Something that Ferrari have snuck in on me without my noticing is fly-by-wire brakes. I really wouldn't have known it if I hadn't read it first, because the pedal feels very sure under your foot. There's a fantastic pressure there. Yeah, that diff just works so well. It's organically controlling the axle and managing slip, even though the traction's off. It's finding a way to apply that power onto the road without generating yaw. Fantastic bark. I'm hardly getting into the upper reaches of the rev. Here we go, singing around 8,000. Built for hairpins. Responsive underfoot. But yeah, the braking, fly-by-wire, who would have thought it on a Ferrari? But working very well, sensitive and tunable, so I can really control exactly how much deceleration. And it's got sort of like a variable yaw effort going into, I can't remember what they call it actually, there's a Ferrari special buzzword for it, but it basically means that it's vectoring its way into the corner so you get better braking, not just in a straight line, but also as you're braking and turning, which is something that's quite to be mastered on a racetrack when you've got no ABS, or with ABS even. You're trying to work that tyre as efficiently as possible. But on a street car, where you might have somebody who doesn't have a huge amount of experience, it's really beneficial to have the system helping you dial that in. Another improvement over the F8 is the braking efficiency has increased by 8%, which in layman's terms means you can stop faster with this car than the previous model. So I think that's probably a combination of perhaps a few physical elements, but primarily software as well, managing how the brakes are being controlled by the engine management system basically. And I'm going to say that on the road it's quite difficult to sort of feel that unless you do a brake test and see exactly how quickly you can stop. On the track though, and again that braking and entering, when you start to work the car into a hairpin, you do start to feel the intelligence in the braking system helping to guide you in. You don't just sort of suddenly lose grip on one of the wheels. Bumpy road, bumpy road. That's really impressive. There's a massive cut in the seam of the road there. Just rode straight over it. You wouldn't even know it was there. It's pretty cool. At a very quick touch of a button to instantaneously soften off the shocks like that. Just love hearing these high revs through these trees, bouncing off, reverberating around. It's beautiful. You wouldn't expect that from a V6. They've really built that in, I presume, by fine-tuning the exhaust like a flute, so you can hear those harmonic frequencies. And it definitely relates to the driving experience because the power is nicely high up. My feeling is that the V8, the sort of surge of torque is more in the mid-range, and it comes in quite a dollop. And I'll be honest with you, on a track, it was quite overwhelming to drive. You had to really whip the opposite lock on very, very quickly and just get the impression that the power is slightly higher up with this car and it's more manageable, and your ear detects the wheel spin as you're feeling it, making it easier.
alle tutti gli anni, alle corsa Parma per cento, perché 3 rue, capito?
Yes.
Trasse, 3 strasse, una centrale, Calestano, 3 strasse. Allora per me le strasse Parma per cento.
Thank you. This is the end of the Parma Poggia di Bacetto rally or race course from back in the day. This was Enzo Ferrari's first competition. It's what got him hooked into motorsport before he would eventually win his first race, I think, at Monza. This chap watched it when he was a boy, so it's pretty awesome. He was saying the air was filled with the smell of oil and the streets were blocked off, and then something to do with Mussolini and Hitler that I didn't really understand. But if this trip has taught me one thing, to answer that question of whether these cars are still popular in Italy or what meaning it has, driving around, the reactions you get, driving this car, you feel like you won the World Cup. Everybody is smiling, waving, interacting. The cars are so loved. It's like it is a national icon. It's absolutely incredible. Cars stop in the middle of traffic to let you through. It's the sort of polar opposite of driving a Porsche in Britain or something like that. People love Ferraris. It's been absolutely amazing to come here. You can imagine the atmosphere when Enzo was doing his stuff. The cars are very different, huge steering wheels, wiping the grime off their faces, racing on a dirt track. Everything's paved now. But for this little monster, rattling around this route is pretty amazing. What's particularly special with that car, I think, is the way they've put some styling into it. The 250 LM from the 60s, an older car, has this very, very distinctive hip line that you really can see they've built in very deliberately into the 296 to give it a very distinctive look and feel. And I also think that even though it's got a hybrid motor, extra weight with the battery and stuff, they have lightened that compared to the other models, slightly old-fashioned. So it sort of suits, I guess, that mix of old and new. Anyway, I think that the car symbolises a lot about Ferrari's history, and what a trip to explore it on. Forbidden territory, ESC off. I'll be honest, it's not something I would probably try in the SF90. That thing is just like nuclear with the ESC off. It has so much power, and it seems to be constantly sort of overwhelming the rear axle. It's just loose as anything. I just get the feeling that this car, even though it hasn't got that much less horsepower, we're talking what, 15% less, just feel there's something going on, and that the E-diff is really plying its trade so well that you can feel what's happening all the time. I don't think it's going to be full of surprises. That's just my gut feeling. Enzo Ferrari said it best: you can't describe passion, you have to live it. I think this car really embodies a lot of that. The sound, the pitch, the shriek from the engine, but the practicality as well, being able to just flip it into EV mode. And what's amazing is just how quickly this thing recharges itself, so you've always got all the assets open to you. But fundamentally, this is a performance car. It's got all of the best things of the modern Ferraris, coupled with, I think, definitely a nod back to the traditional handling for which they're famous. I love this car. High revving, the power where you need it, reliable, but really very faithful, and super driver friendly. This thing is built for ripping. Whoop whoop! Oh, the braking! So much force. That little whip from the turbo. Man, this thing is ridiculously planted. Fantastic backfire. Not a big fan of pop and bang. Ferrari's done it in a very tasteful way. It just gives you a little crackle when you back off the throttle. But mostly it's hammer down, gives it a fantastic song. This V6 pretending to be a V12. Another pretty sensational fact about this car is it only laps Fiorano just over a second slower than a LaFerrari, which is pretty incredible. You think about the price difference, how many of these cars will be made. So many sets of hands will get to experience this. Admittedly, it's a very expensive car, but that kind of performance at the entry level of Ferrari, I think, is fantastic. It's a proper cheeky car. I think if we look back, when Ferrari analyse what they've done here, might think to themselves that, we built a special one with that one. Maybe we gave a little bit too much away.